Good evening, everyone. This is City Council. Just before we get underway, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Nadia's family here this evening. Some have travelled a distance, and they welcome to Dundee Council chambers. You are most welcome. Down to business. Roger, please.
Thank you, Lord Provost. Before the formal business commences this evening, please could I ask for your support with the following in the interests of the smooth running of these hybrid meetings. 1. Personal devices. To minimise interference with the microphone and camera system, please would elected members, officers, members of the public and the press in the council chamber set any personal devices not required for council business, such as phones and tablets, to airplane mode during the meeting, or switch off Wi-Fi on personal devices, but continue to use mobile data, whichever is most convenient for them. This will help reduce congestion on the local Wi-Fi channels and improve stability. 2. Video feeds on council chamber devices. The live stream video will continue to run on the main council chamber devices. However, to reduce Wi-Fi strain and improve stability, please would elected members, officers, members of the public and the press in the council chamber switch off the camera function within Microsoft Teams on their own devices during the meeting. Finally, 3. Roll call procedure. To further reduce network traffic during the meetings, we will only call the roll in the event of a division. We will not call the roll for the purposes of the city read. Lord Provost, members of the council, there are 2 items of business this evening. The first item, item 2, the minutes for information and record purposes.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions? Is this agreed? Thank you. Roger.
Thank you, Lord Provost. Item 3, Deputy Lord Provost. Reference is made to Article 2 of the Minute of Meeting of the City Council held on 27th October 2025, wherein it was agreed that Councillor El Nakla be appointed to the position of Deputy Lord Provost. Please stand, if you are able, as Deputy Lord Provost El Nakla takes the oath de fideli administratione and is invested with the chain of office.
I, Nadia Al Nakla, hereby declare that I will faithfully perform the duties of the office of the Deputy Lord Provost of Dundee City Council, to which I have been elected.
Please be seated. Nadia is going to say a few words, but before she does, I would just like to take this opportunity to congratulate you as the Deputy Lord Provost, Nadia, on your appointment. I look forward to working with you on civic matters going forward. I'm sure we'll have a good time. Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I would like to take this opportunity to say what an honour and a privilege it is to be the Deputy Lord Provost of Dundee, my home city, where I was born and raised and spent my entire life. So it's truly an honour to be here. You know, it's an honour to be elected. For all of us that are elected, it's an honour for the public to put their trust in us. And then for my group and my colleagues to then put their trust in me further and to give me the opportunity. I'm truly, truly grateful. Thank you all. My aunt today told me how my grandfather, who passed away when I was 6, he used to walk me around the city square in my buggy. And he was a truck driver for Coca-Cola. And she said never would he have imagined that his granddaughter would become the Deputy Lord Provost. So it's just a reminder of the generations that have passed that actually did so much struggle and hard work for us to have opportunities. And, you know, representation is important. I don't represent all women, and I don't represent all Muslims, and I don't represent all people of colour, but it is important to say that in Dundee you can have the opportunity to be who you want to be and to follow your dreams. And I'm really, really chuffed. I'm really pleased to be the Deputy Lord Provost to Provost Bill Campbell. I have seen such dedication and commitment, and I think we'll work really positively together. And I'm just, yeah, I am here to assist you. And I think the city is really lucky to have you as their Lord Provost, and I'm really pleased to be your deputy. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to my family. Thank you for Leanna for being quiet, kind of. Thank you to you all for supporting me. Love you all, and let's do the 100 break.
Yeah, I can't remember if we nodded, but just in case we didn't.
Nod. It was official nod.
I just want to ask if anybody has any questions or comments they would like to make. See nothing anywhere, so that's the business. That's City Council. Have a good evening. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's meeting of the Climate, Net Zero and Environment Committee. First item is to ask for declarations of interest. I can see no declarations, nothing in the chat. So I think it's Arlene.
Yep, that's correct, Convener, thanks. That takes us then on to item 2, take pride in your city annual update. You have this for noting.
So the Take Pride in Your City report is, the first thing I'd like to say is I'd just like to congratulate Catherine on her appointment as the Head of Environment. So that was last week, so very glad to hear that news, and thank you for all the work you do. This report is testament to a huge amount of the work you do. It's for noting, it's brief, densely packed with information. It's basically highlighting a huge range of work across the city, 130 community litter picks, the Take Pride in Your Sports Pitches initiative, the community rangers doing 600 hours of volunteering, community cleanups, 700,000 from Scottish Government Recycling Improvement Fund to improve the recycling centres, even a chewing gum task force grant award to clean up chewing gum on the streets. And as ever, we have repeated our success with Bonnie Dundee receiving a silver gilt at the city, in the city category at the Royal Highland Horticulture Society Awards and the Britain in Bloom event. And Nine Wells Community Garden won the first ever Health and Wellbeing Award in the UK. We got the Right Sustainability Award back to Dundee. Broughty Ferry Beach does what it always does best and got its gold standard. And we've got 12 groups receiving outstanding levels in their certificates for the It's Your Neighbourhood Awards. So a report packed with information. I'm very happy to open it up for questions if anybody would like to clarify any of the points in it. I can see that Bailey McPherson would like to make a comment.
A comment, not a question, convener. Like you, I very much welcome the good work that has taken place over the past year. There have been some genuine areas of progress, and I think we all pay tribute to the wonderful volunteers right across the city who take part. I think they are an absolute credit to Dundee. However, I'm at risk of sounding like a broken record, but I will sound like a broken record. I remain concerned. In fact, I add to my concern in relation to the resource that the council has in relation to both street cleaning and ground maintenance, an issue that our group has repeatedly raised over the last decade. And in particular, we have tried to do something in our budget alternative budgets over the years, do something to actually reverse the decline. I recently asked Catherine, who I also congratulate on being made permanent in her role as Head of Environment. I recently asked Catherine for the staffing statistics as they are now. And here are the bald facts. In 2015, we had 110 full-time equivalent street cleaning staff. Last year it was 71. Now it is only 61. So it's declined by 10 over the past year. There are 8 temps for the winter only, but they will only be employed during the winter months. Ground maintenance shows a similar decline. 132 ground maintenance staff in 2015, dropped to 105 by last year, now dropped further still to 98. And I simply make the point that until we grasp, I think we all understand the very significant financial challenges facing the City Council. We're no different than any other local authority in Scotland, but we have seen a very marked decline in the area of streetscape and the area of ground maintenance and parks. And I think that is, if we care about our city, it's something I think we really have to do something about. We will certainly look at the next revenue budget to try to do something further to try and reverse this decline. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey McPherson. As you know, we've not only been concerned about that, we've taken action. So we put in 500,000 2 years ago and an extra 300,000 in the last year to basically increase capacity. So your comments are noted. Can I bring in Councillor Short?
Excuse me, thank you. I grew up in the era of the Wombles, so I knew that you didn't drop litter. And I wish I had £1 for every piece of litter that I pick up in the city square. And I often read on social media that the place is filthy and there's loads of litter, but that's people that do that. And I think Fraser McPherson talked about the volunteers and the work that they've done. But can I also say that when I see the guys out every day in all weathers and they're picking up after people who just drop their rubbish, thinking nothing of it, that they do a sterling job as well. And it must be so frustrating to sometimes come in very early on a Sunday morning or a Friday morning and see the state after there's been partying and things. My question is, do you still have the Wombles, or is there something that's done with young people with regards to actually teaching really early? And to be fair, it's not usually the younger people, it's usually older people that I'm chasing to pick up after themselves.
I'm not sure, Councillor Short, if I could respond on the Wombles question. I'm a bit out the loop there, but maybe I'll find out. I do know that it will come up in the later report about the waste and recycling, that we are undertaking a number of initiatives with the schools and being much more proactive with the schools and encouraging them to get involved. I don't know if Mr. Boyle would like to add anything else.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Short, for the question. Yeah, there's a whole range of initiatives we undertake with schools and with children and various groups across the city. Thanks. And I do keep putting in press releases, it's not the bin men that make the mess. So encouraging people to clean up litter. Are people happy to note this report? Oh, sorry, Councillor Lynn. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Convener. Yeah, one of my real bugbears representing a ward in which the majority of properties are tenemental, as indeed are 50% of properties across the city, is when non-recyclable waste is put in the Euro bins, which are intended for recyclable waste. And I'm looking at the graph for the burgundy bins on page 67 or page 39 of the report.
Sorry, Councillor Lynn, do you want to come back in when we get to that report?
I thought we were on that report.
No, we're still on the Take Pride in Your City report item.
Usually I pay better attention, I'm so sorry.
I'll bring you back in. Can I have, I've got Councillor McHugh, Dorothy.
Thanks, Convener. I was really interested to hear Councillor Short's suggestion that it's older people who are dropping litter. As an older person, and as someone involved in the Dundee Pensioners Forum, I'd be really interested to know if there's any evidence for that. Indeed, is any evidence being gathered at all as to who is dropping litter?
Councillor McHugh, Councillor Short wishes to respond, but I don't want to drag this out. This can maybe carry on offline, so just if you could come in quickly, Councillor Short. Maybe you were miss. Yeah.
So I'm older than the bairns in the school. So anybody, I didn't say older people, I meant older than the bairns.
Adults. Okay. Well, whoever's dropping it, we have to encourage them to stop it and do better. So are we now happy to note this report? Thank you. Arlene.
Item 3, revocation and replacement of Dundee City Council's management rules for cemeteries and update of the terms and conditions for cemeteries. This is for approval.
So this report basically explains that there's been changes, the statute changes to the Burial and Cremation Scotland Act 2016, which is requiring us to look at our management rules and our terms and conditions. The most helpful summary is on page 18, where it basically explains that the changes from the legislation are to do with the length of time you can have the right to burial. It was 100 years. It's now going to be reduced from 50 years to 25 years. That's the main change in the regulation. What we're asking the committee to do here, we've got no influence over the statutory regulations, but to basically remit to the Executive Director of Neighbourhood Services to undertake a consultation to the changes in the management rules and the terms and conditions. So I'd like to open this for questions. I could see I've got Councillor Duncan.
Thanks, Convener. Just a question around clarity regarding the position about dogs being permitted in cemeteries or not. I've got 2 cemeteries in my ward. There's Barnhill is the most established, but there's also the newer Pitkerrell Grove, and also there's cemeteries elsewhere, of course, in the city. It's been my understanding that dogs are permitted, but on the lead. I just like clarity. Is that still the case? And if so, will measures be taken to actually enforce that? Because there doesn't seem to be much enforcement has been going on. Although I do thank officers for putting in better signage, though.
Thank you, Mr. Boyle. Are you happy to come in on that point, or Catherine? Okay.
Thanks, Convener, and thank you, Councillor Duncan, for the question. So I can confirm that dogs are to be kept on a short lead in cemeteries, and there is signage to that nature within our cemeteries. In terms of enforcement, it is difficult to do that, but staff will if they see that happening, and speak to them. Thank you.
You happy, Councillor Duncan?
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it's the rules are good to have, and signage, to announce the rules. But I think, if they're not enforced, unfortunately, there's a minority of people who, I'm informed, just flout the rules, frankly, because they don't think they'll get caught.
So, thank you. So are we happy to, Kevin, Councillor Keenan?
Yeah, it's just obviously if there's a level of consultation, it's just to make sure that we're sympathetic to people that have graves. That longevity in families can vary very considerably over the years, and it might well be that there's a parent in that ground and someone would like to be buried beside them. So I hope that we can come to some realistic view on the 25 years, so that it allows families to have that level of flexibility.
Really keen, and that's really helpful. I should have stressed the fact that people who have already got layers are unaffected by these changes. And we discussed this with the team, and we're going to make sure that it's very clear in all the communication and on the website that if you've already purchased a layer, you are unaffected by these changes. These are just new people who are purchasing, because we're very concerned that folk would automatically assume that they'd lost some rights, but they haven't. Thank you. Are people happy to approve the recommendations? Arlene?
And that takes us on to item 4, Waste and Recycling Strategy and Action Plan. You have this for approval.
Okay, so this report, we were extremely pleased with the report. It's basically updating the recycling and waste strategy. There are some very good, we thought was a very concisely written report. There's a very good graphic on page 43 detailing the volume of waste that is collected by the City Council, a huge amount of work done every day. 40% of the refuse is from shared property, 60% from curbside. We also wanted to highlight the fact that on page 61, it shows that Dundee City Council is very efficient. We're one of the, we're £59.82 per disposal, whereas the Scottish average is 100. To highlight. What stopped working? What stopped working? Sorry,
No, I got it.
Can people hear me? Yeah. And we also wanted to highlight the fact that this report's got some fabulous graphics in it. It's highlighting very clearly where the problems are. So essentially, it's the Euro bins that are the largest source of the problem. 68% of the materials in the Euro bin could actually be recycled elsewhere, and it's trying to communicate with people to make sure we get that message across. So that is certainly going to focus our efforts going forward. I've got a question here from, I'll bring Ken in first, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not sure how I managed to be 3 items out when I started speaking first. As I was saying, one of my real bugbears is non-recyclable waste going in the communal recycling bins, given the huge percentage of platted properties in my ward and across the city. Looking at page, I'd just like some clarification on what it means. On page 39, the burgundy bins, there's the pie chart there. So 21%.
67 on the plan.
67, yeah, sorry, or page 39 of the actual action plan. Have you found it? Yep. So my understanding was that if 10% or more of the waste which goes into a Euro bin is non-recyclable, then none of the bin can be recycled. But this chart indicates that 21% of what goes into the burgundy bins is non-recyclable, and I'm not sure what the 25% could have been recycled means, because does that mean that it's in the wrong bin? So is that a further?
No sound. Sound issue.
Yeah, I'm very sorry for the people online. We do have sound issues. I think we're back on, as far as I can see. Can somebody confirm whether it's working? Yeah, is the sound? Yeah, okay. The questions were about the volume of contaminant in the burgundy bins, and I'm going to ask, is it Tony, you're the best, Mr. Boyle, to come in, or, okay, Catherine, sorry.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Lynn, for the question. So this diagram was based on waste composition analysis that's undertaken from time to time. Normally the Eurobins are collected and they're taken to the reprocessors who will deal with that contamination as and when it's split out from the load, but it's just to give an idea about the amount of contamination that we do find within the Eurobins. Thank you.
Councillor Lynn, would you like to come back in?
Am I correct in saying, though, if more than 10% of the contents of a recycling bin are non-recyclable, then it just goes to general waste?
No, that's not correct. So
No.
the material, the recyclable material would be recycled, but they're able to split that out when they reprocess the material.
I think it says in the report, yeah, actually that can happen, but at a cost to the council. So I think it's really important. I know that there's already been measures taken, doorstep visits, leafleting, I believe with signage going in the recycling bins. I think it's really important that we press on with that and try and get the message across that, you know, try and be the correct materials and the correct recycling bins. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Lynn, we do know that sometimes when the guys turn up, if the bin is so contaminated, they don't lift it. There has to be a special uplift because it would actually contaminate everything in the back of the lorry. So it's a really important issue. It's costing us time, money, effort, and it's just frustrating. So that is going to be the focus of this campaign. Can I bring in Councillor Coleman? Daniel.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. I have to say I have some concerns about the lack of progress in regard to household waste recycled or composted in Dundee. The graph on page 60 of the substantive page numbers, that is, clearly shows from a high of 38.4% in 1920, there's now a decline to 35.1% in the last year. So it was my understanding that the Scottish Government's original main household waste recycling target was to recycle 70% of all waste by 2025. And we appear to be quite a bit short of that, as I understand it, in 2024. And indeed, the average household waste recycling rate across Scottish local authorities was 44.3%, so we're a bit down below the average as well. Can officers please give us some assurances to what steps are being taken to improve the situation?
Bring in Catherine.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Coleman, for the question. So it's accepted that the recycling rate has remained static over the last few years. There are a number of measures being taken forward as part of this new waste strategy action plan, 19 in total, which focus on behaviour change. In addition, we're making improvements to recycling centres that will increase capacity for recycling. Also, there'll be communications campaigns and awareness raising, working in schools and promoting the My Dundee Bin app, which will drive participation. Thank you.
Thank you for that
Coleman.
response. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I think in terms of the team here, I think this report has been very helpful in identifying the core source of the problem, so we know where to focus our efforts. Can I bring in Bailey Scott?
Thank you. My comment question is to do with the Eurobins as well. And the picture of that one on page 69 makes the area look really unsightly, but that's not the worst I've seen. I've seen ones far worse than that. And they sit like that for a long time sometimes before they're tidied up. And residents will take their rubbish out and they'll see that it's full, but they won't take their bag back in again for the next collection day. They'll just dump it there. People leave white goods there, they leave furniture there, they leave carpets there, all sorts of stuff. So I just wondered how frequently, whether we can increase the frequency of emptying these things, because rubbish just generates more rubbish. People see rubbish being dumped and they'll just come and dump theirs there because they think everyone else is doing it. so I'll do that as well. I've also heard from residents that they've seen trade waste being dumped at these Eurobins as well. They lift up the Eurobin and they just open the back of their van and just brush it all into the Eurobin. So really it's how do we stop things like that happening? How do we stop these Eurobins from getting such a mess? Because they really bring down the appearance of our housing. You see areas looking like this, and the fact that they sit for so long without being tidied as well. What can we do to improve all that, please?
Billy Scott, we talk about this all the time in the team, and I know that I spend a lot of time sending emails and calling out the rapid response team. It is extremely frustrating, and that whole focus on behaviour change, of explaining to people what they should be putting in the different bins, the fact it costs the council money when they don't do that, the fact it earns the council money when they do that, we've got to get much stronger. And we were talking about a campaign led by the bin guys themselves to basically speak directly to people to say, we're having to clean this up, we're having to deal with this. But I'll bring in Catherine if there's anything else you'd like to.
Thanks, convener, and thank you, Billy Scott. I think just to echo what you said, convener, that's definitely what we would be driving forward in terms of behaviour change, and also the rapid response teams are very quick at responding to issues when reported. There's definitely a role for environmental compliance colleagues as well in terms of investigating reports of fly tipping. So definitely between those 3 points, that's really how we're proposing. Thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up, please, Commissioner? Has the charge for special uplifts have any correlation at all with the amount of rubbish that's getting left? I mean, if we were to reduce the charge for special uplifts, do you think that would encourage people not to leave their household goods there, or is there no relation to that at all? Folk who are going to dump these things would still dump these things regardless of what they may contribute towards the cost of picking them up.
Thanks for the further question. I don't believe there is a correlation with the charge, but thanks for the question.
I think it might be good to get help from the media here to run a campaign on helping clear up the city and raise awareness on these issues, because these graphics are very clear about the scale of the problem. So the request was to ask you to approve the report. Are people happy? Okay. Arlene?
That takes us on to item 5, public bodies climate change duties. You have this for noting.
Now, this part of our statutory reporting, it's a very technical report, long and detailed, full of information. The key stats are that we are 54.6% reduction in emissions since the baseline in 2007-8. We have decreased our emissions by 4% in the last year, which is very good news. There were concerns earlier on that we might not hit that target, but we have. And that's also including a reduction of 1% in transport emissions. I'm happy to take any questions on this report. I think we're basically then hopefully approving and noting the report and asking for it to be submitted on behalf of the council.
Item 6, Air Quality Action Plan. You're asked to agree the recommendations.
This report is basically reporting back to the committee on the consultation that was undertaken on the draft Air Quality Action Plan. Committee to note the contents of the report and remit the Executive Director of City Development to submit the final version to the Scottish ministers. There are some good news. There's some good news in this report, and that we have met all the targets. Can I invite Councillor Crichton in?
Thank you, convener. The improvements in air quality in Lockyer Road, given the historic problems there, is obviously welcomed by myself and Bailey McPherson. However, I understand that in Lockyer Road, the monitor did show the increasing levels during the period where the recent Riverside composting site fire took place. Can officers give me an indication of the severity of that? And I'm just wondering if, obviously, hopefully, if that's just a one-off, and can they also assure me that this is just temporary indication of what the particulars are on Lockyer Road?
Can I ask, is it Mr. Presswood or Gregor? Gregor, thank you.
Thanks, convener. Unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand, but I will check with colleagues and share that with Councillor Crichton and other members.
About a question from Councillor Scullen.
Thank you. I've got a question on 4.5C, priority C, when it says about increasing the use of active travel and public transport and reducing the use of private vehicles. I just think that it's a bit worrying that we're adding another drive-through, which will encourage more private cars to be on the road. And if we're continue to push planning through like that, the air quality in other parts of the city, especially being so close to the airport, will be worse. And should we be making sure that we stick to the policies in our local development plan and MPF4 to make sure that we continue to improve our city's air quality?
Councillor Scullen, I hear what you say. I think that is an issue to be discussed at the planning committee. It doesn't affect this report, which is a retrospective report. So I think at this point, I'm basically seeking approval that this report is submitted. You can see no further questions. Thank you. That's our committee.
Hi, good evening and welcome to the City Governance and Infrastructure Committee. Can I have the first item, please, Linda?
Item 1, declaration of interest. Are there any declarations?
Just give a minute for declarations in the room and online. Councillor Scullen, please.
Yep, I have a declaration on tenders received, item 6, because that will affect my property.
Thanks very much. I'm sure that's noted. I don't see any other declarations. Move on, please, Adam.
That takes us on to item 2, contract for the treatment of mixed scrap metal, and you have this for approval.
I think this is fairly clear, just for the benefit if anyone doesn't have the paper in front of them. This is following the expiration of the existing contract for the treatment of mixed scrap metals. So it's a procurement exercise and the recommendation is to go with the most advantageous tender. Bailey McPherson, please.
Thanks, convener. My question is it the most advantageous tender? It's 12% more expensive. The winning bid is 12% more expensive than the other bid. Now, I fully accept that there is a price and quality ranking, and there's clearly a quality aspect to this. I'm not asking officers, clearly there are two commercial organisations here, and I'm not asking officers to go into detail at committee, but I think just for the reassurance of committee members, I'd be grateful if officers could circulate something giving us some indication as to why the quality of the winning bid was so much greater than that of the other bid, given that there's a £14,000 difference. 12% more expensive is the bid that is being recommended for approval.
Bailey McPherson, I understand the point you're making because I made the same mistake myself. This isn't actually a cost to council, this is a rebate, so this is a gain to council. But I just pass over to Mr. Boyle to confirm.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Bailey McPherson. Yes, this is indeed a statement about income we'd be receiving. Over the 4 years, it would be £340,000 is estimated. So in this case, it's actually the inverse, it's the income. So therefore, it's actually a higher value we're getting through Robertson's, is also a local company. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Boylan. I hope that clears up your concerns, Bailey McPherson.
Can I just come back on that? Fully explains it. Can I be a little bit gentle and say, could have been better explained in the paper, to be honest, and then the question wouldn't have arisen. But I take Mr. Boyle's point. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I take your point, Bailey McPherson. The paper does say the total value of the contract for the duration of the 2-year specified period is anticipated to result in an income approximately 170,000. But as I said, I did make that same error myself, but it is actually clear on the second read too. Thank you.
But can I just say, convener, it says evaluated bid price. And that's my point. I think that could have been better explained.
Thank you. Can that be noted and agreed? Thank you. Next item, please, Arlene.
Item 3, proposed street renaming part of Emmett Road. You have this for approval.
Again, I think this is a very clear item. I'll just maybe leave it a minute to see if the members got any questions or comments on the item. I don't see any, so can this be agreed? Thank you. I'll take that as agreement. Next item, please.
Item 4, city centre update and next steps. You have this for noting.
So I see there's a number of questions on this, and just before I go into my spiel, I'm sure a lot of elected members like myself were at the light switch on last night, and by all accounts it was a fantastic day and a fantastic evening. So I just want to pay tribute to all the event management staff, to Rebecca, to Jennifer, to Claire, all the communication staff, and indeed all the volunteers who were involved in putting on a spectacular day and evening for us. So again, thanks very much to everyone involved in pulling that off for us. And as I say, this is about the City Centre update and next steps. So this report provides members with an update on progress made in driving forward the City Centre Strategic Investment Plan. The report notes that through public and private sector investment, progress toward addressing some of the long-term challenges is continuing. Particularly welcomes the recent private investment in Overgate and the opening of the new entertainment venue, Livehouse. It's also positive that further capital investment has been secured to improve Union Street and the Murraygate areas. Councillor Duncan, you've got a question, please.
Yep, thanks, convener. Yeah, just be able to welcome, positive news regarding Union Streets and especially Murraygate. I think Murraygate has for quite some time now been somewhat neglected and, graffitied, etc., looking a bit forlorn. So really pleased that, there's going to be action taken forthcoming to actually regenerate and revive the area. And just really looking to see, in terms of the general public, when can we perhaps start to see some of these improvements? And also, apart from the actual suggested, street furniture, etc., can we have assurances that the many instances of graffiti, particularly in that area, will be swiftly dealt with to help with the ambience of the area?
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Duncan. I very much welcome the positive comments and indeed the report coming forward for the Murraygate improvements. While the council can't do everything in terms of this, it's really positive that we have the opportunity to improve the built environment and encourage that investment in the area. I can't speak for how quickly we can get that regeneration, that cleaning of these areas, but I would hope that we'd be on it as much as possible. And I know that the Site Development have worked in concert with the Environment Department on this to make improvements that are sustainable. So I'll maybe just pass over quickly to Catherine for a comment.
Thank you, convener, and thank you, Councillor Duncan, for the question. I can confirm that in relation to graffiti removal, we will, of course, remove graffiti as quickly as we can with the resources that we have. Thank you.
It's much appreciated. Thank you. Any further questions on this item? No? Nope, I don't see any. Can this be agreed? Thank you very much. Take that as agreement. Next item, please, Arlene.
That takes us on to item 5, Dundee Local Development Plan Evidence Report. You have this for approval.
So this report seeks approval of the Dundee Local Development Plan Evidence Report. This is a significant piece of work that will form the basis for the review of the Local Development Plan. Subject to committee approval, the evidence report will be submitted to Scottish Ministers for gate check review. Bailey McPherson, please.
Thanks, Camille. Just a brief comment to say I thought the briefing last week was extremely helpful. I just want to sort of pay tribute to the fact that, you know, you only know by the volume of this. It took a fair old bit to read the whole thing. There's a huge amount of work going into this. And I think it shows the professionalism of what is not the largest team in the world, that they are, you know, moving this forward in such a professional manner. So my grateful thanks, and I'm sure everybody else who attended the briefing last week would agree it was very worthwhile.
Thanks very much for your comments, Bailey McPherson. I do agree it was a very worthwhile briefing. And again, about your comments about the team. And I'll be careful here because sometimes it can be I can be accidentally critical of the nature of the local development plan. As you say, it's a wordy document, but I actually think it's a very useful document, both for what it seeks to do in terms of submission to the Scottish Government, but also as something that gathers together all of our plans in place for anyone that's looking to reference everything the Council's doing in terms of its entire scope. I think it's a very useful document. Councillor Scullin, please.
Thank you. I know this is to approve the evidence report, but I just had wondered if I could ask a quick question on one of the points that was slightly worrying to me. On page 129, 5.32, the domestic abuse and violence against women, Dundee has the highest rate of domestic abuse in all Scottish local authority areas. Recently, there have been a lot of protests in the city under the guise of protecting women and girls, but having been to most of these protests, we have faced a lot of violence, verbally, online and in person. And I just wondered if the council had any plans to do anything about that, because there's a lot of really scared women in the city right now.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Scullin. I don't know, Mr. Hamilton, if that's something you can answer, or you could get an answer back for Councillor Scullin at a later point.
I think it is probably helpful if I speak to colleagues and provide Councillor Scullin with an answer off table.
Thank you very much. Councillor Anderson, please.
Thank you, Convener. I was just to say, I mean, I don't often completely agree with Bailey McPherson, but I completely agree with him on this point. It's an astounding report, huge amount of work and effort, an enormous amount of detail on climate change, adaptation, biodiversity, and all of the work we're doing across the piece. So just to congratulate the officers for pulling it all together in one place. I wish I'd got given this when I started the job. I would have had a much better sense about what we're trying to do. So it's very helpful.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. I totally agree with the comment. I'm sure that will be gratefully received by officers as well. Are there any further comments on this item? I don't see any. So can this be agreed? Okay, I'll take that as agreement. Thank you very much. Next item, please, Arlene.
Item 6, tenders received by City Development. You have this for approval.
So the item is seeking approval to accept a total of 7 tenders with a combined expenditure in the region of £4.5 million for construction and infrastructure work across the city. These tenders include strategic drainage improvements within Lockheed, Union Street infrastructure improvements providing high quality accessible public space, environmental improvements at Baldovie and Riverside household waste recycling centres, window and door upgrades at Alverson Terrace sheltered complex, housing roof replacement works at Hilltown, and public space CCTV maintenance contract renewal. Councillor Coleman, you have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Convener. Just a quick comment. I'm quite very pleased to see the windows and doors upgrades for Alverson Terrace. I've actually had a few residents meetings there over the past couple of years with the tenants in the complex, and that was an issue that was frequently raised by the tenants. So it's good to see that these improvements are now taking place. I'm sure they'll be most welcome.
Thanks very much for your comments, Councillor Coleman. Are there any further comments or questions on Simon? No. This be approved then? Thanks very much. Next item, please, Arne.
That takes us on to item 7, Discover Work Annual Report, and you're asked to agree the recommendations.
So item 7, this report updates committee on the Discover Work Strategy and Action Plan 2022 to 2027. Also summarises progress with measures to improve Dundee's annual participation measure, as well as updating members on the performance of the Employability Pathway Programme up to the 31st of March 2025. And I see Councillor Coleman, you quickly got in there with a question. So Councillor Coleman.
Thank you again, Mr. Convener. And can I specifically ask about the priority ward areas highlighted on page 410? I have absolutely no issue with the 4 wards mentioned being prioritised, but significant parts of my own Strathmartin ward have the same challenges facing constituents needing support to get them into positive destinations. Could officers please advise why Strathmartin is not included?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Coleman. Mr. Presswood?
Chair, I suspect the answer is that the boundaries are set nationally in response to SIMD boundaries, but we will check that offline and come back to Councillor Coleman with more information if that's acceptable.
Thank you, Mr. President. You can maybe put that around to everyone. I think that would be helpful. Thank you. Bailey Keenan, please.
Thanks, Convener. I recently attended a fairness event in the city churches, and getting people into employment and employment that pays well is something that really the council probably and partners need to focus on. So the suggestion that that sort of monthly income needs to go up for a family by somewhere over £1,000 is a difficult task to get to. However, you know, I think there's some positive steps in what we're trying to do, but wonder if we could go that step further. You know, I've never understood what a positive destination is, despite asking endless officers of council, what does it mean? And I think a positive destination to me would be someone in a trade apprenticeship working 40 hours a week or 37 hours a week, with prospects that their wages will go up every other year until they're a fully qualified tradesman. And that's maybe just wishful thinking that would get there. But if the training course that they're on in a positive destination works out at 3 hours a week, as somebody suggested to me it could be, then the rest of that 40 hours within some young person's life still available to take some type of part-time employment. You know, we're looking out for people to get involved in care, and I'm just wondering whether there could be a focus on that, so as that we didn't see the report that came up a month ago or whatever that suggested that were workless households had went from 10,000 workless households to 14,400. You know, what can we do that breaks the cycle of people looking to get into employment, meaningful employment, and help people out of the difficulties they get out of a poverty trap forever? So I'm wondering how officers could perhaps take some of the suggestions that I've made forward.
Thanks very much, Bailey Keenan. I mean, my understanding of the technical definition is that positive destination is further education or work. And I'll let Mr. Presswood elaborate further. I'm sure that we're all very keen to see that improvement in income and positive life chances. And I think the issue we need to focus on as well is those that are in working poverty. And indeed, there's been a focus on the living wage over the last week that I've been involved in. And I think it's important that we use every chance that we've got to promote not just the living wage, but dignity in work and getting people into as much employment as possible. But Mr. Presswood.
Chair, I can confirm in response to Bailey Keenan's question that would include work, college, apprenticeship or university would be the 4 main positive destinations. In terms of your 2 hours a week challenge for a training course, my instinct that's not correct but I'll come back to you with a precise definition of the number of hours that someone needs to be in training in order to comply with that positive destinations tag.
Sorry, Convener. I suppose what I'm making the plea for, if there's a young lad at college for 2 days a week, there's another 3 and weekends that he's available or she's available. So I'm just wondering whether, you know, if that opportunity, if we're having a conversation with them 4 times a year, can we encourage them somewhere else that gets them into a workplace that, you know, that gets them to that positive, to me, a much more positive destination with a work ethic that, you know, that hopefully sees them in a better place the rest of their life.
Thanks very much, Bailey Keenan. My understanding is that an invitation has gone out to elected members for a briefing on exactly what this Government Work Partnership is. Mr. Presswood, I think, is confirming that, and I think that'll give more information on the very points you're seeking. But yeah, Mr. Presswood.
Chair, I'll make sure that the team providing the briefing have that question so they understand that and have the ability to give Bailey Keenan the answer.
Thanks very much. Councillor Short, please.
One of the objectives was increased awareness and access to discover work. Now, I know that they did have a physical presence and that's no longer accessible. So I just wondered, is there still a physical presence where people can go to and discover work, or are you going into the communities and serving within the communities? I know you're doing it in Douglas, Lochee and Stoswell, but just that wider community access.
Councillor Short. Mr. Presswood.
Chair, the strategy does set out a long-term ambition to have a single city centre location where people can come and drop in for employability services, but at the moment it's predominantly arranged by appointment or by accessing the various different communities that the team, that the partnership serves.
Thanks very much, Mr. Presswood. Arlene, can you just confirm, is this for noting or for approval, item 7? It's for noting. Thanks for the confirmation. So can everyone note this report? This is my last item, but just put a linkage to the chair. Elected members may be aware that this is the last committee meeting for the Head of Sustainable Transport, Mr. McNaughton. Mr. McNaughton is moving on to pastures new and is going to be greatly missed. He's been a great source of support and help in the fast-moving field of transport, no pun intended, but he has been extremely helpful over the years that I've been in the city development, and he's going to be missed. So again, thank you very much, Mr. McNaughton. And that is me. Thank you.
You can put the
No. Okay, I didn't disturb you.
Welcome to the City Governance Committee. Willie, can you lead us off, please?
Yeah, thank you, Convener. Firstly, are there any declarations of interest?
Seeing I'm indicating, so take that as a no.
Okay, thank you. There being no declarations, I would like to advise the committee that a request for a deputation has been received from Nick McGowan Lowe, National Organiser for Scotland, National Union of Journalists, to address the committee in relation to item 2 on the committee STV North East Office, which has been placed on the agenda at the request of Councillor Flynn. Is the committee minded to hear the deputation?
Committee minded to hear the deputation? Right. Yes. So, Mr. McGowan Lowe, there's a lectern over here. Come forward to speak to us, please. You have up to 7 minutes to speak to the committee, and if you can stay at the lectern in case members have questions for you after that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Convener, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to talk about a success story that serves the people of Dundee well and why it is in danger. And before I do that, I need to talk to you through the background of STV. STV PLC are a profitable company. They own the only 2 Channel 3 licenses outside the ITV network. One is for STV Central, and that is based at Edinburgh and Glasgow. One is for STV North, the old Grampian license. That's anchored in Aberdeen, but has an office in Inverness, another one in Dundee, and serves the North and Northeast and Angus and Dundee exceptionally well. These licenses are proudly independent from the ITV network and better for it, I would say. STV have these licenses from Ofcom. They signed the licenses, which last 10 years, in January this year. And those licenses give certain conditions that STV has to meet for the provision of local news and quality journalism. 9 months into signing those 10-year licenses, and already STV want to rip up the licenses before the ink is even dry. So let me explain how STV has successfully produced the news. It has 2 separate News at 6 programs going out right now. There are hundreds of thousands of people currently across Scotland watching those. In STV North, they have 40% audience share. Most nights, or in fact quite a few nights, it is either the first or second most watched programme in Scotland. The chief executive of STV, when he was before the Culture Committee at Holyrood, had the audacity to say that no one watched the news at 6 for finding out what the news was. And he had to be reminded of the viewing figures and that the night before it had been beaten only by Celebrity Traitors. And I think we can give Celebrity Traitors its due for that. But apart from that, it is a hugely and widely watched programme. It's done 2 separate teams working in Aberdeen, in Glasgow, anchoring there, and separate news. And within those 2 separate news programmes for the 2 separate licenses, there are also 5-minute drop-in programmes, one that is for people in the Edinburgh area and one for Dundee. And this means it delivers quality journalism for 2 really very distinct programmes, but for 4 separate sub-regions. It is a winning formula. It's popular with viewers, it is popular with advertisers, because STV News, we know, is profitable and it is reaching its advertising targets. And it is a Scottish media success story. It regularly outperforms Reporting Scotland, the 1830 programme put out on BBC One every night. Having got this winning formula, STV plc wants to rip it up. The reason they've given is that there's a decline in linear viewing. There is a decline in audiences, and audiences want to consume news differently. And that is something that Ofcom has been talking about for 10 years. It's true, but it's not the real story. The real story is STV are going to ask Ofcom for permission to produce 1 programme for the whole of Scotland. No separate programme for STV North, no separate opt-ins for Dundee. They want to do away with that and have 1 programme. And the reason for that Hello? Thank you. In March, in May, the chief financial officer says the company was apart from that, they put out a profits warning. And that profits warning tanked the share price. It dropped a third. Am I talking too loud? Could I-
No, no, it's.
Thank you. I could use my picket line voice as a trade union official, but I don't think it would carry online. In March, May, the company was so confident on financial footing, it announced it was going to invest in a radio station on top of its existing obligations, spending £500,000 this year, a similar amount next year. Moving on, they were upgraded the Aberdeen studio, and again, another £500,000 was invested. And then in July, the profits warning that dropped the share price by. In his first role, the new chief executive has halved the value of the company through his financial mismanagement, and it is that reason why STB is looking to act use the law to save money. And this is in a year where there's neither the Euro, where there's neither the World Cup, and if STB is allowed to do this, Nothing increases my respect for my journalist members when you have to do a live broadcast yourselves. I'll pick up from where I've got on, and if anyone online has missed it, I hope they'll come back in questions. I've talked about in the first year in the role, the chief executive has halved the value of the company, but the real cost is now being carried out with the proposed axing of the STV North News, the STV News North Edition, as well as 60 jobs across the company, 30 of which would be in the newsroom. But the actual real cost will be paid by viewers in Dundee and Angus, in the north and northeast and Hebrides and all points north, who depend on quality, reliable, trusted news. The company says that its audience is aging 55 over, 65 over, 75 over. But I tell you this, my mother at the moment, who will be watching the STV News at 6, just round the corner from here, she is not going to get her news from TikTok. She's not going to get her news from YouTube. She knows where she wants to get it. STV should be held to the commitment they entered into at the start of this year to produce the same quality journalism across Scotland. And these proposals are widely opposed. STV have done something that was thought unthinkable. They've united the leaders of the 5 political parties in Scotland to write a joint letter to STV to oppose the change. A petition from viewers has reached 10,000 the last time I checked, and still growing. And our members, NUJ journalists at STV, are starting to vote this week on whether to take industrial action over these stringent cuts. So I'd urge the City of Dundee to join into this fight to defend quality journalism for all those in Dundee and Angus. Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. So I've got indications of 2 questions so far to the deputation. So Councillor Port first, please. Lynn.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming along this evening. Lynn, Susan, Saul, Callum, Felicity, they're not just the people on the news, they're the people that have been throughout all of our careers. And I find it very difficult to see where we could be represented without having STV and the news at 6. It's just an opportunity for us to speak to the people of the area. I went to a Women in Journalism event a number of years ago. It was a bit of CPD, and we had discussions from DC Thompson's with regards to print journalism, and then we were whooshed down to the STV studio and spoke down the line to Aberdeen, but also spoke to camera so that we could get that experience. Do you think that Dundee, 4th city in Scotland, would still have that very unique opportunity to speak to the people if we lose the STV News North edition, please?
The short answer is I do not. I think there's a cultural shift if we move the centre of the STV North away from Aberdeen, away from Dundee, away from Inverness, and drag everything towards the cultural centre of the M8. Because it will simply, Dundee will not get the same recognition in that. Aberdeen won't get the same recognition over the north of it. Last week, I was in the STV office just down the road from here, and they were talking. They'd sent someone, in fact, sent someone up to Wick to do a programme, and it's all parts of Scotland that benefit from having that local coverage, from having the local journalists here. And especially for Dundee. And there is that danger that a producer sitting at a desk in Glasgow is not going to have the same cultural understanding. The news agenda in Dundee is not the same as the news agenda in Glasgow. It's not the same as in Aberdeen or all points north. Elgin isn't Edinburgh. We moving it down and moving the production and presentation down and axing the programme would be worse for the people of Dundee.
Councillor Lynn, and then the Deputy Lord Provost.
Yeah, although I'm maybe part of the demographic still watches linear TV. I actually don't any longer, unless it's football. But I do frequently consult the news, both local and national. So I'll see a lot of the stories. I don't just read them, I'll watch the video playback of the news. Will this closure affect the number of news stories that come from the northeast, like to non-linear viewers as well? I mean, I know clearly it'll affect the 6 o'clock news, but for those of us like myself who don't watch linear TV, will there be less stories coming from the northeast available on the STV News website?
Absolutely. It will have a knock-on effect. Now, STV have said they will continue to have the offices in Aberdeen, the office in Inverness, the office in Dundee, but it is undeniable that under their plans, at the moment, they produce 70 minutes of live news for the 6 o'clock programme every day, 2 30-minute programmes and 2 extra 5-minute drop-ins into that. They want to go from 70 minutes to 30 minutes. That is obviously far less journalism, far less stories being covered. They want to get away with having the license fee and having the benefits of the license fee and all the advertising that brings for the lowest possible cost. And they want to cut journalists as well across the newsroom. Cutting 30 journalists means you have fewer stories, you have less local news, more dependence on stories coming out of Glasgow and Edinburgh. So the answer to your question is yes, it will do away, even online, with the quality local coverage that you have at the moment.
Okay, Deputy Lord Provost, and then we have Councillor Toland.
Thanks. I do think that STV has modernised over the years. I felt like their socials and the video content was really good the past few years. I've noticed that. Do you feel the chief exec and the board don't understand the makeup of Scotland? This is what it's about. You know, Scotland is a country. We're not a region. In the UK, we're a country. Is there the idea that maybe they don't understand the demographics of Scotland and how varying stories can be and the impact on cities? And is that what you feel is going on? Because if the money is being made, then why would a country have one kind of outlet when it's actually quite popular? You said the second most popular or most watched after Traitors. So, yeah.
Thank you. The night I was talking about, yes, it was the second most watched programme. There was a point last week, it was the most watched programme in, of any other programme in the evening schedule. You talked about the online content of STV, and they're very good at that, of having a digital team that delivers news where people are consuming it, whether it's online, whether it's on catch up or so on, and away from linear. Do I think the STV board have an understanding of the people of Scotland? I think they have an understanding of a balance sheet. I think they have an understanding of an immediate loss, and they began by scrabbling around to cover up their own financial mismanagement of trying to find cuts in any single place they could. I don't think those cuts have taken any sensitivity for the people of Scotland, for the value, for the understanding that these news programmes have in the culture of Scotland. I certainly don't sense there is any real understanding of the difference between Aberdeen and Dundee and the different priorities and the local economies and everything feeding in. Because everything that has followed from that fateful announcement that STV gave at the end of September is that they have been utterly unprepared for the level of opposition that they have had. Whereas any single journalist in any of the newsrooms around Scotland would have instantly told them there was going to be uproar at the proposed axing of the STV North News at 6.
Councillor Toland, and then Bailey Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Just want to check you can hear me. I mean, STV North is I think vital. It provides a lot of nuance in terms of our kind of geography and our understanding. And I think on a personal level that coming very, very useful during the Dundee University crisis. And I'm picking up on the parallels from what you've just said there. But my question is, how important do you think that localised news is to the culture of democracy within Scotland?
Absolutely. I mean, the National Union of Journalists, we don't just represent members, we have a strong understanding of what strong journalism looks like. We lobby consistently to have a strong system of journalism across the country that protects jobs, protects journalists, as there are in here now, reporting on procedures so that people can know, people have that insight into local democracy. But it takes jobs, it takes people, it takes news editors having the ability to have journalists to devote time to that and do that. But it has an absolutely fundamental point. People watch news because they're interested in how it affects them, such as decisions in this room or decisions at Holyrood or decisions in the local area, as well as everything else, as well as sport, as well as court coverage and so on. So the importance of local news and quality, trusted local news has never been more important.
Bailey Scott and then Bailey Keenan. And if anybody else wants to contribute, please put it into the chat.
I wanted to ask a bit more about the role of Ofcom in the process. When STV applied for the renewal of the licence, did they have to give an explanation of the number of hours and the breadth of coverage of their news service? Was that included in their application? And what can Ofcom, are Ofcom in a position to be able to say to them, no, this is what you applied for, and we're insisting that you continue to provide what was included in the licence?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. There are two separate processes. STV is applying to Ofcom to vary those licenses. I say vary, I really mean rip up. It would end effectively there being two separate Ofcom areas and would be a merging of the two. To make that decision, Ofcom will be opening a consultation. We don't know when that will begin, except that Ofcom have said it'll be sometime before Christmas. We don't know how long it'll last for, but it should be a minimum of 4 weeks. And we have been lobbying, and the Culture Committee at Holyrood have been lobbying for it to be a much longer period to reflect the amount of public opposition to this move. So that will allow Ofcom, having heard that, will come back with a decision on whether STV is allowed to produce one programme for the whole of Scotland, or whether there are variations within that, or it could come back and say it simply should keep things as they are at the moment. We don't know the outcome of that. But separately to that, STV are already ploughing ahead with a voluntary redundancy scheme. They've been talking to staff, telling them the risk of redundancy, and it says there are changes that it will force through and it does not need Ofcom permission for. And that is the moving of presentation and production from Aberdeen to Glasgow. Now, it remains unseen how you can actually produce 2 live programmes at the same time from one studio. That hasn't been adequately explained. But Ofcom and STV believes that that aspect at least do not need permission for. What is quite clear, though, is that STV are pushing ahead to have fewer journalists producing the journalists that are left.
Bailey Keenan, who will be the last.
Really just a comment. Obviously, thanks for coming along and giving your presentation tonight, and apologies for the sound issues that you had earlier. It just shows that your media training guided you through the show must go on, and you put a good case for STV forward and your colleagues. I really think that local news is really important to the city, and I've seen that Councillor Black's bringing forward, and I'll be supporting that motion, and so the rest of the Labour group. It's really important to have that local news content. I'm going to get to but what we do, my wife doesn't like me switching back to a channel. It's really important that people get that local news through Dundee. So thanks for coming here and putting forward the case.
Thank you, Nick, for your presentation and taking numerous questions. You can get a comfortable seat now. And Councillor Black, you have a motion.
Thank you, Billy Sawyers. Could we display the motion on the screen? So, councillors, for transparency, I should say that I'm a member of the National Union of Journalists, but I have no personal interest in this issue, so I haven't declared an interest. I'll not keep you long because I think Nick McGowan-Lowe has put the case very well and given a tremendous amount of good information. I have three things that concern me about the STV proposals for cuts. The first is it's an economic development thing. One of the things that we want to do in this council is we want to create jobs, we want to have interesting jobs, highly technical jobs. We have a wealth of media talent in the city, but we don't have much in the way of broadcasting jobs, and losing 6 jobs out of the Dundee office at STV, I think, is disappointing in terms of the range of choice available to people locally. 60 Scottish jobs is a big chunk of the STV staff, and you know, jobs in the media are hard to come by, and these are highly skilled people. So there's the economic development argument against these cuts. The second argument is community. The STV bulletins spotlight local organisations' work, charity work. They keep us informed of crisis, things like COVID, fantastically useful medium of communication. And if there's a storm, then STV are there reporting it, and we can see what's been happening to our local area. That's important. So I think a lot of that coverage just wouldn't happen. The third thing is local democracy. Now, STV are not a normal company in that they have been entrusted with the task of providing local news. And they've been entrusted that under this rule, which is actually, I think, Section 5 of the Broadcasting Code. And they have to show due impartiality and due accuracy, and they have to avoid any undue prominence of views and opinions. Now, they have a legal duty and a duty enforced by Ofcom to provide that kind of news, and it's only broadcasters that have that. And although some of our other news outlets do an excellent job and do try to maintain accuracy and impartiality, it's the broadcasters who we depend on for that, particularly at times, for example, at election time, when all of us in all the different political parties are vying for coverage and looking for fair treatment. So what I'm saying is that we cannot afford to lose another local news outlet. We can't afford to see the output that it produces diminish. And rather than allow a commercial company to slough off a very important task which they've been entrusted with, and because it's inconvenient, because clearly producing quality news is expensive, and STV are no longer in the position of regarding it as a license to print money, which is what was said right at the very beginning of the STV channel. It's more of a pressure now, an economic pressure to provide the news, but it is absolutely essential that STV continues to provide local news and local news for Dundee. And if they can't, then someone else should get the license. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Anderson to second the motion, please.
Thank you. I wonder if you could remove the motion. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wanting to support the motion, 3 key points. I just wanted to start by commenting on a wonderful piece that James Robertson, one of our most loved authors, wrote about a decade ago called The News Where You Are. If you haven't seen it, please look it up on YouTube. It's very funny. But those who have seen it will remember how well he portrayed that very dismissive and patronising view of the national broadcasters towards the regional broadcasters when they end their programme every night by saying, "That's all from us. Now it's time for the news where you are." And he then went on to comment that that worldview embodied that sense that the news where we are, not where they are, is not the news. You know, the national news is the news. It comes first. And the news where we are is not the national news. It comes second. He explained that whilst the news where we are may be news to us, it's not news nationally. And on Saturday, there is no news where we are. If there is, it can wait until Sunday. Sadly, James couldn't have predicted what we're facing can't even hope to hang on to the news where we are. We're facing the prospect of not having that news covered, and ITV North East basically covers half of the land mass of Scotland. It covers a quarter of the population. This is from Dundee to Aberdeen to Inverness up to the Highlands, and we're saying that entire half land mass of Scotland won't be covered with live news coverage. And if something happens after 5 p.m, it won't be breaking news where they are. It can wait until tomorrow. This matters because local news matters. It shapes how we see ourselves. It gives voice to local people, local businesses, community groups and people in the street. It gives people a chance to speak who would never be heard on national news. It also creates a historical and verifiable archive of what happens round here. It documents our story, our history. It reports what matters most to us, what happens in our schools, our community centres, our city centres. It echoes back to us in our living rooms and on our phones that matter and we're important. And it speaks to us in our own accent, our own dialect. Local journalists are embedded in their local communities. They may have watched the story develop. They may have broke the story. They've shaped the story. They're on the ground when the news breaks. And their trade is governed by the rules of checking out sources and verifying facts. And this proposal actually talks about taking 60 people out of that role across half of Scotland. So basically, there'd be far, I don't know how you get the news when you can't find the reporters to report it and develop the story with you. And my final point is right now, all of this couldn't be more crucial. Journalists, as I've said, check their sources, they verify facts. There are some rules recovering what they write. And at this point in time, we're absolutely in an onslaught of intentionally destructive mis and disinformation, where the sources of that information are completely cloaked and the facts aren't just not verified, they just don't bear any resemblance to reality. So it's more important than ever when people are knowingly and deliberately perpetuating, spreading dangerous lies, and we have to live with the consequences in that in Dundee every day at the moment because of misinformation, when hatred and fear are being incited. It's really important that we protect journalists who can get real stories out there and check their facts. As was mentioned earlier, STV just signed this 10-year deal for the licence a few months ago. They're now talking about fundamentally changing that agreement and losing 60 jobs in the area. I would ask you, especially when we have to counter the wall of misinformation, and when local journalism really matters, please support the motion and let's try and protect these jobs and protect the news.
Thanks for that. Bailey McPherson, please.
Thank you. Could I start off by saying I think Mr McGowan-Lowe spoke extremely eloquently, perhaps despite our dodgy technology, but I think he was very crisp in his delivery and got across all the main points that I think really underline how vital it is that the STV North brand and the news that goes with that is not lost. Now, back in 2006, I was one of those along with other councillors, parliamentarians and others who tried to, and in the event unsuccessfully, campaigned against the loss of the Grampian identity. I always felt that was really a bad news. The company was already owned as part of the STV group by then, but I thought that the loss of the Grampian identity was to be missed, frankly. And not long after that all kicked off, there was a new chief executive, not the current one. The then new chief executive officer of STV was Rob Woodward. And he was doing a sort of series of road shows around Scotland, and he had a sort of evening drop-in at the Seabraes studios. And I remember specifically asking at the time about the current, the public service obligation in relation to the north and northeast of Scotland. And the then chief executive officer could not have been more clear that although the overall brand was STV for both central and north and northeast Scotland, the separate public sector obligation in relation to the north of Scotland would be retained and would be respected for eternity, if you like. And I think it would be an absolutely crying shame, for the very good reasons that Mr McGowan Lowe highlighted, if our local news output was lost and there was a single news output from Glasgow, for the good reasons that everyone, I think, so far who has spoken has mentioned tonight. Rufus Radcliffe, the current Chief Executive Officer at STV, as Mr McGowan Lowe has alluded to, has talked about financial woes. And bluntly, it is nonsense. I mean, just in the last few weeks, we've seen the advertisements going out for the launch of STV Radio, which is apparently to launch early in 2026, with its new purpose-built studio, needless to say, Glasgow-based. So I don't think there's much of an argument on the part of STV that this is a necessary financial issue, other than one created by the company to, frankly, save money. I think if Ofcom is fit for purpose, Ofcom should have no doubt that it has an absolute obligation to ensure that that public service obligation is adhered to by the company that has been given effectively the two franchises, one for Central Scotland and one for North Scotland. And I think it will be absolutely disgraceful if Ofcom accepts what STV is proposing. So I'm hoping that in our own way, by passing this motion tonight, that will be one more voice in the crescendo of voices across Scotland saying what STV is doing is completely unacceptable. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Billy McPherson. Councillor Short, you have a question for officers.
If it's too late, that's okay. Okay, it was just a quick question. Obviously, when the Kilt Walk came back to Dundee, some of the officers and myself, we walked the Kilt Walk and we worked it with STV Children's Appeal. And I know that they've been great over the years with charities in the city. And I just want to make sure, no matter what happens, that we continue to have those dialogues. We went once to Glasgow, to the studio, that these dialogues will be ongoing, so that we might not be in the news, but we can still punch when it comes to Dundee being part of that story.
If in doubt, turn to the Chief Executive. Andrea?
So we do still try and have those conversations, and we do try and make sure that local charities are tied into STV Children's Appeal. So we'll continue to do that. We continue to promote it through the Meet the Funders and things like that as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming from various comments that have been made in the past little while that this motion is passed unanimously. Okay, thank you for that. Willie, please.
Okay, thanks, Convener. Takes you on to item 3, Police Scotland funding. This item has been placed on the agenda by Councillor Duncan.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks very much, Convener. Could I ask officers to maybe circulate the motion, and then I'll speak to it? Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, so obviously we all rely on the police here in Dundee and elsewhere in Scotland, and a strong, well-funded, efficient police force is vital. So really the purpose behind this motion is I was concerned recently to hear concerns raised by Police Scotland that to the Scottish Parliament's Criminal Justice Committee that urgent support is needed to strengthen frontline policing services. The Police Scotland Chief Officer team has indicated that the force requires an additional £140 million in funding just to maintain day-to-day spending in the next financial year. Chief Constable Joe Farrell has made clear that Police Scotland may have to reduce officer numbers unless the Scottish Government provides additional funding for 2026 to 27. She has highlighted a surge in complex demands on the force, including a doubling of child online abuse cases to nearly 1,500 a year, and an increase in protests and, I suppose, indeed counter protests from 1,000 to over 2,000 annually, and also heightened monitoring of serious and organised crime and terrorist threats. So, in other words, a burgeoning demand. Additionally, Police Scotland has highlighted that a flat cash budget settlement for 2026-7 would force recruitment to stop and could see officer numbers fall below 15,500 by March 2027. And this would affect badly and impact upon visible policing, prevention work and response times. It's in the light of that I propose that, committee agrees that the work of Police Scotland is vital to ensure safer communities, less crime and supported victims. It therefore instructs the Chief Executive to write to the Cabinet Secretary for Justice and Home Affairs, Angela Constance, MSP, making clear the views of committee that a flat cash settlement for Police Scotland for 2026-27 would be unacceptable and would lead to a decline in policing effectiveness. Moreover, that calls from the Police Scotland Chief Officer team for an additional £140 million in funding for day-to-day spending in the next financial year are reasonable and vital to ensure that Police Scotland has the resources to undertake its vital role effectively across Scotland. And I understand that my colleague, Councillor Crichton, will second me.
Okay, just before I bring in Michael, I've got a couple of members wanting to make a declaration. So Nadia first.
It's just I have a family member within the police, but also within the department named in the motion. I don't think it affects anything, but I just felt best to mention it.
That's fine. And Stephen.
Yeah, very similar, Chair. I've got a family member in the police force. I thought I'd just declare it for the sake of that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks. Michael, back to you to second, please.
Thank you, Convener. I've seconded everything Councillor Duncan has said, and I think it's really crucial. It's not a party political point. I think we all have seen in our local communities the great work that the police do, but it's plainly obvious that they need more funding and more support. And I think it's on our frontline services, and it's when there's a lack of police presence, then it's very clear the stats that show the increase in crime and antisocial behaviour. So I would urge everyone to support our motion this evening and welcome that. Thank you.
Any further contributions on this? Bill Keenan?
Yeah, really just looking to see whether the Lib Dems would consider changing it very slightly. So within that letter to for the Chief Executive to write, that he obviously notes that Council can't afford for anything to be top sliced for what would come in the direction of local government. And obviously if there's money that needs to be found for police, that the Scottish Government find it elsewhere within their budget. Just wondering whether that would be acceptable to the Lib Dems.
That's a very valid point.
Yep, can I comment on that, Convener?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Duncan, my mistake.
Yeah. No, thanks very much. No, I think what Kevin has just put forward there is perfectly reasonable and more than happy to incorporate that. Yeah, it certainly shouldn't be at the expense of local government.
Okay, well, Bill Keenan's kind of made the point I was going to make in summing up, but happy to, on that basis, I think, again, unanimous support across the chamber for this. Okay, moving on, please.
Thanks, Xavier. Takes you on to item Council Plan Mid-Year Progress Report. This is for noting.
So this is a mid-year update on progress against the council plan, covering performance up to the end of September. Out of 22 performance indicators contained in the plan, 73% of them have improved or remained stable since last year. 43 actions in the plan, 11 are completed and 25 are at least 50% complete. In the update last year, 7 areas for improvement were identified. 3 of these have been completed, and for the remaining 4 areas, there will be improvement activity ongoing with planned improvement actions. Now, I'm seeing, is that Councillor Coleman?
Yes, thank you. I was rather concerned to read on page 5 that in relation to opportunities provided to young people, as the council has consistently failed to meet its target, the way of tackling this is to change. And by change, I mean to lower the target. Could officers give more detail of the background to this? Because lowering the target because you can't make it strikes me as rather less an optimal precedent.
No, I'm not sure who's taking that question. Andrea, initially, anyway.
So there has been some discussion with services about what we have actually been able to achieve. So the target was reviewed to try and bring it in line with what would be realistic. However, there is some new work that's been set up from City Development. So they're looking at a new initiative, Earn and Learn, and some more details about that will come out, and we'll have another look at the target when we get to the end of the financial year. But it was really to make it more realistic, because when we set the targets initially, they were, I suppose, challenging. So we were trying to always improve, but we'd kind of baseline it as we go forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Are you okay with that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any further questions on this report, so I'm taking that as agreement. Blake, please.
Okay, thanks. Item 5, City Development Service Plan. This is for noting.
So, City Development Service Plan aligns with priorities set out in the Dundee City Plan 2022 to 32 and Council Plan 2022 to 2027. Covers all 3 divisions of the department. Contains 44 performance indicators. 30 of them have improved or have been maintained since the last report. 20 out of 22 actions in the plan are on schedule for completion. 4 actions were completed last year, and 2 actions are behind schedule, but they're expected to be completed in 25-26. So, Bailey Scott, I think you're first, please.
I have 2 questions, please, Convener. That's okay. One for you and one for the officers. Is where it highlights the need for increased investment in road maintenance. I just wondered whether in your forthcoming budget you're going to include additional monies for more road repairs to be carried out. My question for officers is in respect of the waterfront. That was the 30-year master plan, and I think we've only got about 6 years left to go before we reach the end of the master plan. And in recent months, I've been contacted quite frequently now by residents who are concerned by the apparent or the perceived lack of progress with the waterfront. And I just wondered if officers can advise us that things are going to plan. We will see all the sites developed before the end of the 30-year master plan.
Okay, thanks for that. So in relation to your first point, as you would imagine, I'm not going to publish the administration's group budget tonight, but there are wide-ranging discussions between the administration group and senior officers on a whole range of matters. And over to Robin for the waterfront, please.
Yep, Chair, we are in fairly regular contact with Councillor Scott on this topic, and I think we are very conscious of the interim position of the waterfront pending development of the 5 or 6 most prominent sites. We have put in place an arrangement to ensure that the hoardings are maintained, that graffiti is removed, and that cultural opportunities are going to be promoted on them. So I think that's one very positive measure. In terms of the tangible development proposals, we are now seeing an upsurge in investment inquiries, and I think that is true across Scotland. it's clear that the Scottish Government, having done some work to clarify position around their rent caps legislation, has definitely given certainty to the developer community. So we are typically speaking to probably 2 new inquiries a month now at the waterfront. Now, that's not by any means to say that there will be development permitted there, but it shows that the development sector again is very interested in Dundee and will engage with us as matters progress. So I think there's a positive story to tell on both fronts, but we are very conscious of the points that Councillor Scott's raised.
Okay, Councillor McHugh, you're next, please.
Thank you. Pages 18 and 23 of this report provide updates on the increasing number of workless households across the city and the work being undertaken to enhance employment pathways to support around 11,000 economically inactive people in Dundee. The employment pathway update signals significant improvement, despite Dundee remaining at the bottom of the table of the 32 local authorities in Scotland as at August 25. We've had further detail on these improvements in the Discover Work annual report update that we heard about earlier, but can officers expand on this and comment as to whether it heralds a realistic expectation of improved performance over 26 and 27, particularly in relation to the more than 14,000 workless households in Dundee?
Robin, please.
Chair, thanks. Councillor McHugh, it is a very difficult position. I think you've summarised some of the challenges very effectively. We are making progress in terms of youth participation. We are making progress in a number of the mainstream employability indicators, and I think that overall the partnership work is very effective. I think it's demonstrated perhaps by the fact that most of the employability partners are currently based in Dundee House alongside our own staff. Just to go back to the point about the annual, the number of workless households indicators, we did follow this up with UK government because there was such a significant increase in the number of workless households in the city. And I think when we got to the bottom of it, it transpired that it's a very small sample for this indicator. And because of this, UK government have said that it's an official statistic in development, i.e. their confidence is lower in this indicator. So it will vary significantly from year to year. I think it's useful because it makes sure it's kept on the table for officers and elected members alike, that we do need to focus on the whole household and not just the individual person that we're trying to get back into the workplace. But it's certainly brought employability for the household to the top of the table over the past few months.
Thanks, Scott. Just a supplementary to that, Robin, would I be correct in saying a household full of students who aren't working would be termed as a workless household?
We believe so, but I will go away and check that. I think we did look into this. We couldn't get a definitive position, but we do believe that is the case. And clearly, Dundee in particular has a lot of resident student households because there's been a lower proportion historically of purpose-built student accommodation, although that is now being addressed.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Not seeing any other indications in this report, so I'm taking that as approval.
Thanks, Mayor. Item 16 is capital expenditure monitoring. This is for noting.
Standard report. Any questions on this? Bailey Keenan?
Can I maybe ask the officers to give detail of the projects that were pulled during the summer holidays, didn't happen in our schools, and whether we're on a risk of that work not being carried out, causing us some grief in winter months?
Neil, are you able to?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thank you for the question, Bailey Keenan. I don't have details of all the projects that have been reprofiled, but I can confirm and give assurances that there won't be any risk to the compliance for the schools within that period until works are undertaken. I'll provide some detail further to yourself, Bailey Keenan, and other members in due course.
Okay. Not seeing any other questions, so I'm taking that as approval for that report.
Thanks. Item 7 is revenue monitoring. This is also for noting.
Any questions on item 7? Bailey McPherson.
Thanks. My questions around the information in 3.3 regarding the SFER voluntary severance and early retirement scheme, which is excluded from any of the projections in this report. I was just really wondering, obviously it's for officers to determine the outcome of that in terms of specific posts. I think we all fully understand that. But obviously, I think all elected members will want to have reassurance that any people who leave the council's employment through that scheme are not in posts that have a detrimental effect on service delivery, or that there are mitigations that can avoid a detrimental effect on service delivery. And I was basically wondering if the Chief Executive could give some assurance that there will be information given in due course to elected members, not on individuals, but on the effect on the service of the outcome of the current package of voluntary service and early retirement that occur under that current package.
Okay.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Bailey McPherson. If you can leave that with me, I'll speak to relevant officers and see what information can be provided to elected members.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rome, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a very brief question on the overspend in corporate fleet. My understanding previously was that some of this was going to be capitalised going forward to lower this revenue cost in future. Just wanted a bit of clarification on timelines for that.
Paul.
Thank you, convener and Councillor Rome, for the question. I could confirm that officers are actively reviewing the outturn in respect of fleet just now, and particularly reviewing whether or not any additionality in terms of capital grant funding can be used to purchase new vehicles that would in turn offset that revenue overspend. There's a slight delay in that because we just want to make sure that any purchases would be in line with the new revised procurement strategy, but happy to come back to officers in future reports and provide an update.
Bill Keenan.
Yeah, it's a question about the voluntary retirement scheme, because I had an employee coming on to me earlier on the phone saying that he received the sort of bad news that he wasn't going to get early retirement, but told he could go and speak to his line manager. And being a line manager himself, he also knows that his staff was told that, and none of them had anything to do with the decisions that were taken. So I wonder if maybe the Chief Exec or officers could take that back and give councillors some level of feedback on how the likely that would happen. Because surely the people that should have been given the feedback should have been the people that made the decision on whether they were getting it or not.
Sounds maybe the Chief Executive would need a bit more detail offline before he could give a definitive answer to that, but maybe
Thanks, convener. I'm happy to pick that up with Bailey Keenan and come back to all elected members should there be a need to provide further assurance around the early retirement voluntary redundancy process and the way in which information is being communicated to our people.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further questions, so I'm taking that as approval.
Thanks. Takes on item 8, the Integration Joint Board Financial Recovery Plan. This is for noting.
So this report updates the committee on the IJB's 25-26 financial recovery plan, which was agreed by them in October. Latest financial position for Dundee Health and Social Care Partnership shows a projected operational overspend, of just under £6 million. As a result of continued increase in demand for health and social care services, increased costs of recharge services hosted by other Tayside IJBs, and the anticipated non-achievement of agreed 25-26 saving initiatives. The IJB's remaining general reserve funding is sufficient to meet actions and options introduced as part of the 24-25 financial recovery plan continue to be implemented and enhanced. Committees are asked to note the report. So I think I have Councillor Crichton.
Thank you, Convener. Given that the Dundee Integration Joint Board has already identified over £17.5 million in savings for 25-26 financial year, the additional financial recovery actions listed on page 89 are deeply concerning. Can I specifically ask officers on the impact of the £500,000 further cut to the care at home spend and what that means for service users?
Eve, sorry, you're there.
Thanks, Convener. Yes, the significant savings we've had to make already for 25-26, as you said, was over £17 million. Some of the overspend this year is because we've not managed to achieve that overspend, but a lot of that is around the care at home activity and spend that continues to pressure our system. We continue to work in a delicate balance between trying to meet financial targets and financial balance with continuing to maintain our good delayed discharge performance, which requires significant care at home investment. So we continue to try and support as best we can our care at home activity, despite the financial challenges, but recognise that means we've got eligibility. We've increased our eligibility criteria as a result to manage our demand levels.
Okay, Bill Keane. Thanks for that. Don't often get the opportunity for the IJB to be here and ask questions. I know that we have for colleagues that are on the board and leave a lot on their shoulders as the question officers about the situation we're in. I think it was about a year ago where Councillor Finnegan raised the fact that nurses were going to receive a reduction in hours, I think from 37.5 to 36. And she questioned at that time what was being done to backfill the hours. And I'm just wondering whether there is money followed for the government to support that reduction in hours. And where we are in relation to staff, when we're sort of seeing £17 million worth of cuts and here's a bit more, starts to worry as to whether the service that we're delivering is as good as it could be. We all sort of financial difficulty. So where are we in relation to recruitment of nurses? Do we have vacant posts? Have we filling them all, or how many posts do we have vacant?
Thanks, Bill Keenan, for the question. So in relation to the reduction in the working week, which applies to all NHS staff, we are working with the NHS Tayside to identify what the implications are for that within our own workforce. And there is indeed additional funding that sits within NHS Tayside from Scottish Government to support that where there is additional costs incurred. So that would tend to be for a lot of our services that are frontline, such as community nursing and some of our inpatient services, where there is additional cover required to meet shift patterns on that basis. In relation to recruitment, so our recruitment strategy is around protecting frontline services at all opportunities. So in terms of, as I said, anything that requires a safe staffing coverage within a ward or in a community setting will continue to be prioritised. We have recruited, we've been very successful in recruiting the newly graduated practitioners, particularly around nursing this year, that have just really come into our workforce over the last few weeks. So that has helped to kind of cover some of our gaps. And we do have a workforce plan to continue to identify where there are potential gaps within our services and how we might mitigate against them.
Supplementary. You suggested that you were dealing with the NHS in relation to the cover or the extra payment. Is that something that's still ongoing? And is that money that you're still expecting to come in the direction? So maybe alleviate some of the problems that we've got.
So the changes in NHS reduction in working hours is actually coming over a staged process. There was a reduction of half an hour that's been put in place, and we've received funding already for that for the kind of first half an hour. The next hour's reduction kicks in from the 1st of April next year, which will be taken into consideration for our 26-27 budget.
Dave, there was talk about performance of the IGB there. I wonder if you could share with committee how well, in comparison with other local authorities or other IGBs rather, we do in terms of delayed discharge.
Certainly, thanks, convener. So Dundee regularly sits within the top 5 performing areas within the country around delayed discharge. Tayside as a whole performs really well. A lot of that is down to the good and effective measures that we have in place and processes we have in place across Tayside. Indeed, many other areas come to Tayside to look at the Tayside model. Dundee has we've kind of improved our performance quite considerably over the last few years, but a lot of that is around the social care capacity and the challenge we've got is to try and maintain that over the coming years.
Thanks, that's reassuring to hear. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm taking that as approval for this report. Oh, sorry, Councillor McHugh.
Forgive me, convener, I put my hand up and then went into the chat. Can I just add something to what Dave just responded on delayed discharges? Because I sit on the IGB and he's right, we had good performance on delayed discharges, but we did so well that we overspent the budget. And that was to keep people out of hospital, to get them home and get the care that they needed at home. And that was a good thing to do, but we did overspend our budget. Hence, the cuts that you're seeing will be coming in the budget in the years going forward.
Thanks, Councillor McHugh. I think that's a very valid contribution. With that, can we move on, please?
Okay, thanks, convener. Takes you on to item 9, budget consultation report. Excuse me. I'd like to ask the committee to note there is a typographical error in Appendix A, and this should read community organisations rather than cultural organisations. You're asked to give the recommendations as listed.
Okay, so this report seeks approval for officers to consult on potential options for the forthcoming financial year, which will inform the final decisions of councillors. The options proposed could contribute up to £4.2 million in savings. It's proposed that the consultation and range of options set out in Appendix A will run for 4 weeks over November and December. Citizens will be able to comment on the overall budget and specific options online or via paper forms at various community locations. Responses will be analysed and shared with elected members for the budget setting meeting. So we've got amendments, but we'll take some questions before we get to that. So Councillor Duncan, you're first, please.
Okay, yeah, thanks, convener. I've got a question regarding item 9 on page 93, namely the lifeguarding service at Broughty Ferry Beach. Broughty Ferry Beach is, of course, extremely popular with swimmers of all ages, ranging from elderly people to toddlers, and it's one of the prime attractions in Broughty Ferry and indeed Dundee. Very important indeed for the local economy. And the way this reads is that the council could stop the lifeguarding service provided on a seasonal basis at Broughty Ferry Beach. Can I just be clear that what's actually meant is that the council would stop funding that service, which actually this year and I think last year was provided physically by the RNLI, but I think it was funded by the council. So could I have clarity on that? And also the views of officers of whether or not withdrawing the lifeguards would actually be an increase to safety in any way or an impediment.
Okay, Tony.
Thanks, convener, and thanks, Councillor Duncan. The proposal is to remove the funding for the Royal National Lifeboat Institute's service where they provide a lifeguard
Broughty Ferry is one of a very few number within Scotland that we provide this on a seasonal basis, and by that we mean between the 1st of April and the end of September over the last few years. There's no scope for us providing that service internally, and the saving would be approximately £32,000 per year. 22,000 in the first year, because we would be looking to bolster the signage that's in place to improve guidance around how to use the beach safely. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Coleman next, please. Daniel.
Thank you. Item 14 on page 49, cease public space CCTV maintenance. To my mind, there's obviously no point in having CCTV is not maintained. If it, once it's broken, that would be the end of it. If this proposal was enacted, can officers indicate whether CCTV output will even be monitored whilst it still works?
Yes.
I've had a few constituents ask me for extra CCTV, never mind possibly not having it at all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Ewan?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you for the question, Councillor Coleman. The proposal is to cease maintenance of the cameras, so they will initially still be functional, and Police Scotland will still continue to monitor the cameras.
Okay, Councillor Crichton, please.
Thank you, Convener. As a West End councillor, I think I had to ask this question. I'm looking at item 21, page 94. If the removal of local community planning and community officers for the West End and Broughty Ferry take place, can officers confirm how community engagement will actually take place? Reading into this, what proposals will be made for these wards that would sufficient for these posts?
Yeah, before I bring in Tony, can I stress this is a consultation document and it's not a sort of baked and ready to go. That's quite important
I appreciate that, Convener. It's just that obviously it doesn't raise alarm bells as a briefing, but I appreciate the point.
I'm sure nobody would want to raise alarm bells here tonight. Tony, please.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Crichton. In terms of the detail you've requested, we will provide that detail in due course. So there's too much information sort of requested to be able to provide that quickly in a short answer. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McHugh, please.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. I take your point, Convener, that this is a consultation, but it's a consultation on a list of already drawn up options. And I would just like to highlight to members that options 7 and 8, if they come to fruition, will severely affect some of the poorest and the most vulnerable people in our city. That's the discretionary housing payments and the Scottish Welfare Fund payments. I'll go on to my question. Okay. My question relates to actually the amount of the shortfall. Section 4.1 reports a projected budget shortfall of 8.4 million. The options listed in the table attached to the report total cuts of 4.2 million, which is roughly, well, exactly 50% of the total. And so if it is as suggested in 4.3, further cuts are necessary to close the remaining gap, can officers clarify that a further consultation will be carried out prior to the budget setting process?
Paul?
Thank you, Councillor McHugh, for the question. So I can confirm that the report sets out what is a challenging financial deficit that's projected for next year of £8.4 million and a range of areas in terms of how that deficit may be reduced, and those may be due to the council making further budget efficiencies next year, or indeed raising income, additional money that comes through the settlement, or raising council tax. So the given the timescales in terms of setting the budget and to undertake a consultation, there would be not another opportunity to bring forward a report for further consultation in terms of savings reductions from removing services. So that's not going to happen, albeit the deficit that has to be made up to prepare a balanced budget would have to come from the items I've already mentioned.
Okay, Bailey Scott, please.
Thanks, Convener. I really hope an awful lot of these items here are just kite flying. You had included some of these in last year's list and they weren't taken forward. And all of them will have severe impacts on bits and sections of our community. My question, though, has been asked by Councillor Crichton, and it's to do with the removal of the Community Planning Partnership and the Community Officer from the West End and the ferry. No, the ferry doesn't have any SIMD data zones, but it does have its own particular issues. And if you take away the Community Planning Partnership and the Community Office from there, it'll lose the focus that it has on really important community issues. And so while the Executive Director wasn't able to give us any mitigating circumstances today as to how that would be dealt with, we really need to know what's going to replace that if you're not going to continue with it.
Take that point on board. Councillor Black.
The proposal to, or the suggestion, I'd rather call these suggestions and proposals, to close 3 pools in schools which serve areas of multiple deprivation, because Harris does as well, worries me. But before we come to any final decision on closing any pools, will we have information about the possible knock-on costs to Leisure and Culture Dundee, and also the cost of doing something else with those pools, turning them into halls, classrooms, or whatever it is that people have in mind? Because I think having the full picture would be important before we take any decision, which would lead us to destroy 3 very valuable assets in schools, in which I believe they are heavily used. Thank you.
The very short answer is yes, but I'll ask Paul to amplify.
Thank you, Councillor Black, for the question. So I could confirm that, as already has been mentioned, the list of options within the table are purely options in terms of items that could be taken forward to reduce the budget deficit. Notwithstanding that, I confirm in terms of prior to the budget being set, there will be further information provided to all elected members that would inform them to take any decisions as part of the budget setting process.
Okay, thanks for these questions. And we had notice of an amendment, so Councillor Scullion.
Thanks. Can the amendment be shared, please? So following on from what Councillor Black has just said, our amendment is to take option 6 off the consultation altogether. So I won't take up too much of your time, but this amendment, in our opinion, is quite simple. Learning to swim saves lives. We're an island surrounded by fast-moving water, and we have lochs and rivers too. Many councils are making dangerous choices to close school and community pools where kids have lessons in this life-saving skill. I'm very passionate about this because I grew up in a tiny village in the Highlands and we didn't have a pool until the late 80s. The community rallied around because they knew how important it was to teach children in the community to swim. The schools have always sent the kids to learn to swim in that pool, and they had to fight to keep it open, so I know how important it is. But we're very lucky that Dundee has so many swimming pools in the schools because it's a life-saving skill, as I've said before. In some communities, local people have had to fight for these pools to be built, work hard at keeping them open, and now are fighting the closure of these much used and needed community facilities. We already have them in our schools. Why would we close them and lose these facilities? If these pools close, it means less space for kids to have lessons and prices some families out of lessons altogether. And swimming is so much more than just an important life-saving skill. Pools are somewhere where participation levels for those with disabilities and additional support needs are the highest. With the closure of these pools would come social isolation and no participation in any sport for many people. The benefits go far beyond just learning to swim. It's a place to keep fit and somewhere to improve your mental health. I would ask today that you agree to take this out of the budget consultation. As I've already said, it's a life-saving skill and we can't take that away from the children.
Okay, thanks for that. Bill Keenan.
Yeah, I'm obviously making that request that councillors across parties obviously support the motion. Everybody we'd been contacted last year about swimming pools and how important swimming was to young people. And, you know, we're an area surrounded by open water. There's a regular summer warning out there about the issues around going open swimming, in particular where temperatures are absolutely freezing cold. And being a councillor that has a big open reservoir in their ward that's 24 foot deep, that often freezes over in the winter, and I suppose even in the summer the temperatures would be of a ridiculously cold level that people shouldn't go in it for their own safety. Kids tend to put themselves through that danger, but they've probably learned to swim elsewhere. It's important that we keep our swimming pools open. I think our city forefathers some time back had that vision. There probably should have been a pool put into the new school. We certainly shouldn't be closing the pools that are in our schools at the moment. Would have been shipping kids down to the central swimming pool to give them a lesson. That's just mere time out of school. That's a false economy to be shutting these pools. So I make a request across the parties to support the motion put forward by my colleague.
Thanks for that. So I'll be moving the report as is. As I've said, it's very important, and it says it in the title, it's a budget consultation. There are a number of things that are very difficult proposals or possibilities within this. And I think we're duty bound to go out to the public and consult, and based on that consultation, frame our own budgets. And obviously some of us will have different choices from others. But I think we need to give the public the opportunity to have that say moving forward. So I will move the report as is. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hunter, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, convener. Obviously, I'm not unsympathetic to what either Councillor Scotland or Bailey Keenan has just said. I think it is worth remembering that the current budget position, which is the council doesn't know what its financial position is for next year yet, because the Scottish Government doesn't know what its financial position is for next year yet. I think in an ideal world, we would know what our position is and then go out and consult on where we know we are. And as we've already heard from officers, what the proposals are regarding the budget as a projection. It might well be that that's exactly what we have to save when we come to the budget later on, next year. But it could be better, it could be worse, we just don't know. And so I think it's appropriate at this moment in time that we do the consultation. We're obliged to consult with the public on our savings proposals. As I said, in an ideal world, we know where we are and then go out and consult on that. And I don't think it's the intention of the amendment, but we've already heard from elected members tonight their concerns about some of the other savings proposals that are on here. And I think we could all go through them all and say, we don't want this, we don't want that. And I think hopefully when we get to the budget, that's exactly what we can do. But I think the appropriate thing at the moment is just allow us to go out, consult with the public, and then see where we are and make those decisions at that point. As I said quite clearly, we could go through this all. There's some here that I certainly wouldn't want us to take forward, but we don't know where we're going to be. We might have to do that. And I think it'd be wrong at this moment to take any option off the table until we know that position. So I will second you and support you, Kabira.
Thanks for that. Wendy, do you want to sum up?
No, as I said, it's a life-saving skill, and I think taking the opportunity away from kids to learn to swim, because it's very expensive to send your kids to swimming lessons, and taking away that opportunity when we live where we live, in my opinion, is just a really, really silly mistake.
Okay, thanks for that. If you go to the vote, please.
Okay, thank you. So the motion by the convener, seconded by Councillor Hunter, is that the report be agreed as submitted. The amendment by Councillor Scullin, seconded by Bailey Keenan, is as circulated. Convener.
Motion.
Councillor Anderson.
Motion.
Councillor Black. Lord Provost Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Cardell.
Motion.
Bailey Dawson.
The motion.
Deputy Lord Provost Del Nakla.
Motion.
Councillor Hunter,
Motion.
Councillor Lynn,
Motion.
Councillor Mills,
Motion.
Councillor Rome,
The motion.
Councillor Short,
The motion, please.
Councillor Smith,
Motion.
Councillor Toland,
Motion.
Bailey Keenan,
Amendment.
Councillor Cruikshank,
Amendment.
Councillor McHugh,
Amendment.
Councillor McCurvin,
Amendment.
Councillor Scullin,
The amendment.
Bailey Wright,
Amendment.
Bailey McPherson,
The amendment.
Councillor Coleman,
The amendment.
Councillor Crichton,
The amendment.
Councillor Duncan,
Amendment.
Bailey Scott.
Amendment.
Okay, that gives you 14 for the motion and 11 for the amendment. The motion's carried. That now takes you on to item 10, Global Custody Services Procurement Tayside Pension Fund. You're asked to read the recommendations.
This report provides an update on the sourcing strategy for the tender process for global custody services, seeks approval to commence the tender process leading to the award of a framework contract. Important to note that this will be funded in full by the Tayside Pension Fund. Any questions or comments on this item? Not seeing any, so I'll take that as approval for item 10. And
Thanks, Convener, for that item having been agreed. I can advise that the remaining item is confidential and the committee may be minded to deal with this in the usual way.
Committee minded to agree in the usual manner. Seeing nothing saying we're not, so take that as agreement, and that is the end of the committee. Thank you all very much for your attendance.